Show, and welcome to part 2 of our 2025 calendar unblankets project for March. Today I'm going to show you how to make this pot of gold applique. We're going to make the pot, we're going to make the gold, and if you're not here for the pot of gold part, maybe you're here for the cauldron full of bubbling ooze. Well, we're going to show you how to make the ooze today too. I'm going to be demonstrating the pot in purple so you can really see all of the different stitches that I'm doing, and today's pattern, the pot of gold, the gold, and the ooze are all included in one written pattern. It's in our Etsy shop, and we'll link to our Etsy shop in the description box down below. So if you want to help support our show, you can pop over and pick up a pattern, and we very much appreciate it if you do. So without further ado, let's grab our hooks, grab our yarn, we'll head on over to the craft table, and we will stitch up a pot of gold, or perhaps a cauldron full of bubbling ooze. The choice is really up to you. In order to make our cauldron pots, whether you want to make them for a pot of gold for March or perhaps a spooky cauldron for Halloween in October, you're going to want to use approximately 20 yards of your chosen cauldron color. So I made this one in black, obviously, but today I'm going to be demonstrating in a brighter, shinier purple, just so you can sort of better see what I'm doing. I recommend a size 4 medium weight acrylic yarn, but depending on the project you need your applique for, try to match the yarn weight and fiber to the project. I'm using a 5mm hook with this yarn today. This is also known as an H or an 8, but again, depending on the fiber and yarn that you are using for your other project, you want to match the hook up to your personal tension and yarn weight. Pair of scissors, a yarn needle, and that's all you need to make the cauldron. I'm also going to demonstrate how to make the gold coins. You need around 2 yards per coin, probably less, for your gold coins. And if you want to make a little ooze for a Halloween cauldron, I'm going to show you how to do that too. You need around 6 yards of an oozy color. I've got a bright green here today. All of this is acrylic, all of it is size 4. And once you've got all that together, we can get started. To begin our cauldron, we're going to make a cinch circle. So take your yarn, wrap it around your fingers so that you've made yourself a little circle or a little loop. Place your hook through that, grab your working yarn, pull up a loop on your hook, and chain 1 just to secure the circle. We're going to be using the double crochet stitch for our cauldron, so chain 2 more. This chain 3 will count as a double crochet for row 1. Let's work 11 double crochet stitches into our cinch circle over top of that short tail. You want to work your stitches over your short tail so that you can cinch the circle shut when you're done. Once you've worked 11 double crochets into that cinch circle, including your chain 3, that equals 12 stitches. You can grab your short tail, pull it nice and tight to cinch up the middle of the circle, and you're going to join with a slip stitch to the top of the chain 3 that began row 1. So you've got 12 stitches at the end of row 1. That's the center of our little cauldron right here. We're going to chain 3 to begin row 2. For rows 2, 3, and 4, the chain 3 at the beginning of the row does not count as a double crochet. We will in fact be skipping it, but we do need to start with it. Into the same place that you just chained out of, you're going to work a double crochet. I'm going to work over top of my short tail. You can, of course, leave it to the back and weave it in later, whatever's more comfortable to you. You want to work 2 double crochet into each stitch all the way around. That will give you 24 double crochet, including the chain 3. But when we get back to the beginning, we're going to use the false stitch. And if you're new to the concept of the false stitch, I'll explain that when we get there. Once you've worked 2 double crochet in each stitch all the way around, just ignore my short tail there, you'll be back to what is the false stitch. The false stitch is the slip stitch that we make when we join a row when we're working in the round. If you're working right-handed, it'll be sitting at the bottom of your chain 3. If you're working left-handed, it'll be sitting to the left. So if you're working right-handed, it's to the right of your chain 3. If you're left-handed, it'll be to the left of your chain 3. Either way, sometimes it's very easy to confuse it as an actual stitch, and in the case of this round circle that we're making, we actually want to use it. So make sure you've worked 2 double crochet in every real stitch all the way around. Work a double crochet into that false stitch. This is going to now stand in for the chain 3, which we are going to skip over. We're going to join our row with a slip stitch to the top of the first real double crochet. That will push the chain 3 to the back. It will make a nice solid round circle with no gaps in it. You'll have 24 stitches at the end of row 2. We want to continue to increase. We're going to chain 3 to begin row 3. We're going to double crochet into the same place that we just chained out of. Once again, the chain 3 will not count as a stitch. We are going to use the false stitch when we get all the way back around to it. But in the meantime, let's work on an increase pattern. Double crochet once into the next stitch. And for the rest of this row, 2 double crochet, 1 double crochet, 2 double crochet, 1 double crochet. You're going to repeat that little increase pattern all the way around, and we're going to have 36 stitches at the end of row 3, and I'll catch up with you back at the false stitch. At the end of row 3, you'll have 36 stitches if you include the chain 3. We want to skip the chain 3, so we need to replace it with a double crochet. We're going to work into the false stitch at the base of the chain 3, work 1 double crochet into it. Now you can skip over the chain 3 and join with a slip stitch to the first real double crochet. So it doesn't change. You've got a 36 stitch count at the end of row 3. And row 4, we're going to do 1 more row of increasing. Chain 3 to begin. Chain 3 will not count as a double crochet. We will be skipping it. Double crochet into the same stitch as the chain 3, and now double crochet once into each of the next 2 stitches. So that's the increase pattern for row 4. 2 double crochet into the next stitch, double crochet once into each of the next 2 stitches. 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, all the way back to the false stitch, and I will catch up with you there. Once you're back to the beginning, we're going to work a double crochet into the false stitch that sits at the bottom of the chain 3 there. This will replace the chain 3. We can now skip over the chain 3 and join with a slip stitch to the top of the first double crochet. And there we go. That is 4 rows of increasing. You've got 48 stitches at the end of row 4. Now we're going to turn this into a little bit of a pot shape. We are going to chain 3. The chain 3 at the beginning of row 5, which is a partial row, will count as a double crochet. Work 2 more double crochets into the same stitch that you just chained out of. So chain 3, 2 double crochet in the same place. Double crochet into the next stitch. Half double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. Single crochet into each of the next 4 stitches. Half double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. Double crochet into the next stitch. And, like we began, 3 double crochet into the next stitch. So this little lip of our cauldron begins with 3 double crochet, ends with 3 double crochet. Remember, the chain 3 at the beginning of this row does count. So that gives us just a little bit of a lip up at the top. We got to finish it though. Chain 1, turn, and now you're going to slip stitch into each of those 16 stitches all the way back. Remember, you're going to slip stitch into the top of the chain 3 that began the row because it counts as a stitch. And I will see you back there. When you get all the way back across, don't forget to slip stitch into the top of the chain 3 that began the row previous, and that just gives the top of your pot a little bit of an edge, a little bit of definition. That is it for the pot build, where you're going to make its feet and its rings. They're going to be attached separately just so they're a little more solid. You want to leave a nice long tail in order to sew down your pot. And the way I would generally figure on how big to make my sewing tail is to take my yarn and just sort of drape it around the outside perimeter once, and then twice, and then 3 times. And that's usually enough yarn to sew everything down with. Remember to fasten off. If you still have a short tail hanging out the back, you can weave that in now. But that is the base of the pot. Now we're going to make its little feet, followed by the rings. These are the little feet we're going to make. We're going to make 2 of them. You don't need very much yarn for the feet, so grab your cauldron color, make a slip knot. You're going to chain 4 to begin. Skip the first chain from the hook, single crochet into the second chain, half double crochet into the next chain, and double crochet into the last chain. So you're making a little triangle basically. Leave a short tail for sewing. You don't need a whole lot of tail here. Fasten off. We're going to sew these right to the bottom of our cauldron, so right away, because these are part of the applique. They don't have to be sewn on at the point where you're sewing the applique. So the whole thing is made before you sew it down, is what I'm trying to say. You want to position your feet at the bottom of your cauldron, roughly 6 stitches apart at the bottom. I like to first position them, get an idea of kind of where I want them to sit, and then I'm just going to zoom in a little bit here. I'm going to sew the first foot in. So I like that right there. I thread up the tail in my yarn needle, and the first thing I do is go through a stitch at the side of the pot and across the top of the wide part of the foot. And once that first stitch is in, I feel more comfortable picking it up. I go through the next stitch along the pot and a piece of the top of the wide part of the foot, and then I bring my tail through one more stitch to the back of the cauldron. I like to knot the short tail and the long tail of the feet together. Not too tightly, I don't want to pull any stitches out of alignment. So that's one little foot attached. And then on the back of the cauldron, I just take a second to weave those little tails in under some of the stitches along the wrong side or the back of the cauldron piece. And this will help them just sort of disappear. You don't really have to worry about weaving them in back and forth because they're not going to want to come out. And if you have anything left over, you can double back on that or just trim any excess. It's entirely up to you. So that's foot number 1 on. Then I count about 6 stitches away and I attach the second one. Same process. I'm going to sew all the way along those 3 stitches roughly along the side of the cauldron. That's about the length of the long or the wide side of the foot. Then I'm going to bring my tail through the next stitch to the back or the wrong side of the cauldron, knot my short ends together, and weave in my tails. Next, we want to make the rings that sit on either side of the cauldron. So again, you're going to take your cauldron color, make a slip knot. We're going to chain 14. So that's 14 chains. Join with a slip stitch to the first chain to make a ring, and then you're going to very carefully slip stitch through each chain all the way around. So try not to slip stitch too tightly or too loosely, but you're going to slip stitch into each of those 14 chains all the way around. You're going to make 2 of these. Once you're back at the beginning, you'll have something that looks like this, nice little ring. You've slip stitched into that last chain. You're going to fasten off, leave a little bit of tail. Again, you don't need a whole lot of tail here, but just enough to make a few stitches to attach your ring to your cauldron. I like to knot these 2 ends together. And this long tail is what you'll be attaching the ring to your cauldron with. So go ahead after you've made number 1 and make number 2. Once you've got your 2 rings, you want to position them on either side of your cauldron so that they sit, sort of the tails that you've tied together sit just below the lip where those 3 double crochets sit on either side of the top edge of our pot. You want your yarn needle. You're going to thread up the long tail, and you're just going to attach it to that stitch right below the 3 double crochet at the edge. So that's the first place you're going to put a stitch. Now I like the way it looks when it's just slightly covering the front and slightly covering, sort of sticking out. So what I did over here with this one is I stitched 3 or 4 of the stitches along the ring, 2, 3 or 4 of the stitches along the side of the cauldron, and it looks like this. I position it so that I've got the right side, or the side I like, facing out. I've attached the first little stitch that sort of acts as a guide, and I'm going to go through the edge of the ring. Then holding this little bit so that this sort of sits along the top edge of my cauldron. So the ring is on top of the cauldron. I'm just going to flip it upside down. Get that little short tail out of the way. And I'm going to sew the edge stitch of the cauldron to the edge stitch underneath the edge stitch of the actual ring handle here. And this yarn I'm using is kind of slippery, so that's why it wants to fall out of my yarn needle, but the nice thing about a wool needle is that it has a big eye, so it's easy to thread back up again. And I'm going to do this to 3 or 4 of the stitches along the handle, grabbing the underside of the stitches on the handle, and that will attach it to the edge. And of course, when you're sewing the whole thing down, you can opt to pull the ring out and make it look a little bit more ringy, or you can sort of tug it down, make it look a little less round or circular. It's entirely up to you. But once you're finished sewing back here, I like to do one more little stitch in place, make a tiny little knot. There we go. Make a wee little knot on the back, and then I weave both the short and the longer tail, or whatever's left of the long tail, in through the stitches on the back of the cauldron. So everything is kept to the back of the cauldron. So that's short tail number 1. And the remainder of the sewing tail, I'm going to go through the same place. And remember, when you've stitched down your applique to your project, these little tails are going to be trapped at the back, so don't worry too much about how it looks. And that is the ring handle. It's got kind of a neat 3-dimensional effect. And you're just going to sew the other one down on the other side in roughly the same place. Now, you can decide if you want to have them sort of sitting a little bit more on top of your cauldron, a little more to the side. Maybe you want them to be just stitched right at the corner so that they remain free. It's entirely up to you and how you see the ring handles on your cauldron. I am going to be using my cauldrons as flat appliques, so I want to keep a little bit more of the ring attached to the cauldron. So I'm going to go ahead and sew down that second one, and then come on back, we're going to make some coins. Assuming you're here to make a pot of gold, you're going to want to make some gold. So take some gold yarn, make a cinch circle, so roll your yarn around your fingers, pull up a loop, and chain one. That secures your cinch circle. We only need one chain. We're going to use the half double crochet stitch. We're going to work half double crochets, 10 of them, into that little circle, making sure that your stitches are worked over top of your short tail. Once you have 10, grab the little short tail, pull it nice and tight, find the first half double crochet you made, and slip stitch to join. That is a little gold coin. You're going to want to leave enough tail that you can sew it down to whatever your project may be. And take a moment to weave the shorter tail in on the back of your coin. So I like to kind of weave it underneath those stitches across the back a few times. Because this is going to be sewn down, I'm not too worried about the little short tail coming undone. And once I've gotten it sewn, or I should say woven in underneath, at least all the way around once, let's say, I can trim any excess because I know it's not going to come undone. There we go. And that is a little coin. And now you can make as many as you need to fill your pot, maybe have them spilling down the side, however many coins you like. If you don't need a pot of gold, but you're really more interested in making a cauldron full of boiling ooze, you're going to want to make some ooze for your cauldron. So grab your oozy color. I've got a lovely bright green here. We're going to make a slip knot to start with, and we're going to chain 15 to begin. Once you have 15 chains, you're going to skip the first chain from the hook, find the second one, half double crochet into it. You're going to half double crochet in each remaining chain all the way back. At the end of row 1, you'll have 14 half double crochet stitches. Once you've half double crocheted in each chain all the way back, you'll have 14 stitches at the end of row 1. Now we're going to make it look like it's boiling. So we're going to chain 1 and turn. Into the first stitch, we're going to slip stitch. Into the next stitch, we're going to work 3 double crochets. Slip stitch into each of the next 2 stitches. And you can see we've got a little bit of a bubble there. 2 half double crochets into the next stitch. Slip stitch into each of the next 2 stitches. Work a double crochet, an extended double crochet, and a double crochet into the next stitch. It looks like this. Double crochet, an extended double crochet, yarn over, pick up a loop, work the first 2 loops like you normally would, chain 1, and then work the last 2 loops. Nice tall stitch, and double crochet as normal in the same place. Slip stitch into each of the next 2 stitches. 2 half double crochets into the next stitch. Slip stitch into the next stitch. Work a half double crochet into the second last stitch, and slip stitch into the final stitch along. You'll have about 20 stitches there, but the actual stitch count doesn't matter so much. You've got a bubbling, boiling ooze. You want to leave yourself a nice long tail for sewing it down. And when you sew this down with your cauldron, you're going to want to make sure that when you position your cauldron and your ooze, you're sewing your ooze down first, because the ooze needs to look like it's in the pot. So Let's just fasten off here. Maybe weave in that short tail. Just get it out of the way across the back. There we go. So when you're sewing, you would decide where it is you want your actual pot. You kind of tuck your little ooze in underneath the boiling top of your pot. And when you've decided where it is you want your cauldron and your boiling ooze, you would then take away your cauldron, sew your ooze down first, make it as compressed as you possibly can. That way it won't look like it's sort of spilling out the edge, unless you want it to spill out the edge. I mean, how disgusting is your ooze? And then when you sew down your little cauldron, you're sewing the top part of your cauldron down over the bottom lip of your ooze. And that's what makes it look like the ooze is in the pot. Very similar if you're sewing down coins and your cauldron. If you want the coins to look like they're in the pot, you sew down the coins that are in the pot first. And then when you sew down the pot, you would be sewing it down just overlapping the bottom edge of the coins a little bit, depending on however many you have down there. You might make a whole pile of coins, in which case, you know, you're going to have some bunched together at the bottom, and then you want to make sure that you're just sort of stitching the top lip of your cauldron just over top of the bottom edge of however many coins you have, if it's a stack or just 3 or just a handful. And that's what you want to do. And then the cauldron itself is one piece. You can sew all the way around the edge. You don't have to worry about the center or the middle of your rings, just around the outside edge, around the feet, the bottom, the feet, outside edge, and then of course across the top. And when you're doing that, you're making sure that you're stitching down over top of whatever might be in your cauldron. So whether it's a pot of gold or a cauldron full of bubbling ooze, it's a fun applique, and it's a big one, and it'll look really neat on your unblanket project, on a regular blanket project, or really on any little thing that you think might require a pot of gold, or a cauldron full of ooze, or maybe a cauldron full of gold. I mean, I guess you can cook up a lot of things in these big pots. Anyway, we hope you enjoyed working along with us today on this pot of gold or cauldron full of ooze, and we will see you soon here on the Jayda and Stitches show. Until then, stay safe, stay crafty, and have a great week. Bye, guys!
Hi, everybody! Mr. InStitches here. Thank you for watching today. Here are some of our other videos you might be interested in. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe.